From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis. Only on WION, World is One.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is One.
This is right, erupt.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Ross Cullen, joining you live from Paris, and these are the top headlines this hour. Moscow warns it will step up missile attacks on Kyiv in response to what it said were sorties across the border, targeting a military factory near the Ukrainian capital overnight. China must pay a greater price for backing Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a senior United States senator says during a trip to Taiwan. More than 150 Palestinians injured in clashes with Israeli police at Jerusalem's AlAqsa Mosque compound. Shanghai residents scuffle with hazmat-suited police, videos on social media show, providing a rare glimpse into rising anger in the megacity over punishing COVID lockdowns. And Joe Root resigns as England's Test cricket captain after a rollercoaster year that ended in a torrid run of results, including an Ashes drubbing and defeat in the West Indies. It's been 51 days since the war in Ukraine began, and Russia has once again changed its military strategy. Moscow says it has hit a plant, making anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles outside Kyiv. This attack comes weeks after withdrawing operations from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and its surrounding areas. Russia made the concession during the peace negotiations in Turkey, and this U-turn comes after the Kremlin accused Ukraine of targeting Russian border towns. The Defence Ministry said that the scale of the missile strikes against Kyiv will increase in response to any, its terms, terrorist attacks on Russian territory. The ministry also added that Russian troops hit a military factory outside Kyiv late on Thursday.
Last night, high-precision, long-range, sea-based caliber missiles hit a military facility on the outskirts of Kyiv. As a result of the attack on the AlAqsa machine building plant in Zuliani, workshops for the production and repair of long-range and medium-range anti-aircraft missile systems, as well as anti-ship missiles, were destroyed. The number and scale of missile strikes against targets in Kyiv will increase in response to any terror attacks or sabotage committed by the Kyiv nationalist regime on the Russian territory.
Meanwhile, Ukraine has denied bombing a village in Russia's Bryansk region, which is not far from its border. Kyiv instead has accused Russia of staging the incident to stir up anti-Ukrainian hysteria in the country. Amidst the claims and counterclaims, Russian troops continue to bomb Ukrainian cities in the south and east. Residents of Odessa, Mariupol and Kharkiv have been bracing for renewed attacks. And more than 4.7 million Ukrainians have fled their country so far. In what can be termed as a significant and humiliating loss for Vladimir Putin, Russia's guided missile cruiser Moskva sank off the coast of Ukraine in the Black Sea. It is still unclear whether the ship was struck by Ukrainian missiles or suffered from Russian mishandling. What is certain, though, is that the biggest wartime loss of a naval ship in 40 years is a major blow to the Kremlin.
Russia's lead warship in the Black Sea, seen here in a satellite image from April 7th, sank on Thursday, according to Russia's defense ministry, in a fresh blow to Moscow's military campaign as it prepared for new assaults in East and South Ukraine. Russia said ammunition on board the ship had exploded, causing a fire, but Ukraine said it struck the Moskva with a missile. Satellite images taken earlier this month showed the Moskva Russian missile cruiser in the port of Sevastopol before it was damaged. Russian news agencies reported the loss of the Moskva, the flagship in Russia's Black Sea Fleet, happened as it was being towed to port in stormy weather. Earlier Thursday, a spokesman for Ukraine's military said it was hit by a Ukrainian-made Neptune anti-ship missile.
The flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet sustained substantial damages. A fire started. Other ships tried to provide assistance, but a storm and powerful explosion of ammunition turned the ship over and it started sinking.
Russia's defense ministry said more than 500 crew aboard the Soviet-era missile cruiser were evacuated. Russia did not acknowledge an attack and said the incident was under investigation. Reuters was unable to verify what happened to the ship or whether it had sunk. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said Thursday the U.S. could not yet determine whether the ship had been hit by a missile or what impact the loss might have to Russia's assault.
So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term. Whether it has an impact on their naval capabilities in the long term is just unclear right now.
The incident came as Russia's Navy continues its bombardment of Ukrainian cities on the Black Sea nearly 2 months after it launched the invasion. Russian forces have pulled back after suffering heavy losses and failing to take the capital, Kyiv, as it focuses new attacks on the south and eastern regions of Ukraine.
Germany has impounded the world's largest superyacht, which reportedly belonged to the Russian oligarch AlAqsa Usmanov. According to reports, the 150-metre-long Dilbar has an estimated value of nearly $600 million. The boat had been docked for repairs in Hamburg since October last year, but authorities had run into a legal hurdle as the yacht was owned by the oligarch's sister. Following the widespread Western sanctions on Russian oligarch family members, European authorities could take hold of the super yacht. AlAqsa Usmanov is one of the most prominent Russian oligarchs who has come under scrutiny due to his links with the English Premier League football club Everton. just like former Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich. Two of Abramovich's yachts have been identified for seizure in the islands of Antigua and Barbuda. At least a dozen Russian oligarchs' yachts have so far been seized or identified for seizure, and mainly in Europe. Spain has impounded 4 yachts of Russian oligarchs, which includes names like Alexander Mikheyev, who is the CEO of Russia's defence conglomerate, and Igor Sechin, former Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, who's considered to be a close ally of Vladimir Putin. Here in France, there's also been the seizure of one of Sechin's yachts. In total, France has impounded 3 vessels. Italy has also seized 3 of the Russian yachts, while the United Kingdom has taken 2. The United Kingdom has signed a controversial new scheme to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The plan has been criticised by international human rights groups as shockingly ill-conceived and contrary to international obligations.
Britain could send tens of thousands of asylum seekers to Rwanda under a new partnership signed by the two countries on Thursday. The policy is aimed at tackling spiralling illegal immigration into the UK, where last year more than 28,000 people crossed from mainland Europe, many with the help of organised crime gangs. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the resettlement plan will apply to anyone who has arrived illegally since January the 1st.
This innovative approach, driven by our shared humanitarian impulse and made possible by Brexit freedoms, will provide safe and legal routes for asylum, while disrupting the business model of the gangs.
Britain's Home Secretary Priti Patel was in Kigali to sign the deal, which will see the UK initially contribute just under $160 million. She said it was a substantial investment in Rwanda's economic development. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta said migrants would be given education and employment opportunities, and the chance to make new lives as full members of our communities.
And for those who don't wish to make Rwanda their new home, they will be facilitated to return to their country of origin or settle in other receiving countries.
The scheme drew swift and strong criticism from opposition politicians in the UK, with one calling it extortionate as well as unworkable and unethical. Johnson said he knew the plan would be criticised and face legal challenges, but he promised to do whatever it took to deliver it.
Russia has warned it might deploy nuclear and hypersonic missiles to the Baltic region if Sweden and Finland join NATO. Here's our full report.
Russia warned on Thursday that if Sweden and Finland join NATO, Russia would deploy nuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles in an exclave in the heart of Europe. Both Finland, which shares an 810-mile border with Russia, and Sweden are considering joining the US-led military alliance. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, said that should Sweden and Finland join NATO, then Russia would have to strengthen its land, naval and air forces in the Baltic Sea, where Russia has its Kaliningrad exclave sandwiched between Poland and Lithuania. Medvedev also said he hoped Finland and Sweden would see sense, or they'd have to live with nuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles close to home. There could be no more talk of a nuclear-free Baltic, he said. One town on Finland's border with Russia is Imatra, home to 26,000 people casting a nervous eye towards their eastern neighbour. It used to welcome Russian tourists, but since Moscow launched what it calls a special military operation in Ukraine, Imatra fears receiving less benign arrivals. That worry has prompted Finland to consider joining NATO, which would be a major pivot in its security arrangements. Katri Lat is a resident of Imatra.
We have so far seen Imatra as a very safe place, and we still think so. But I believe the thoughts of the people here have now changed in the way that a small fear has now appeared. And Russia, the country next to us, is a little different to other countries, and you cannot necessarily always trust what they say. So maybe people should be prepared for the fact that we might have to leave quickly.
Finland has long avoided disagreements with Russia for the sake of friendly relations. But Prime Minister Sanna Marin said on Wednesday it must be ready for all kinds of responses from Moscow now it's weighing NATO membership. She said a decision would be made in the coming weeks.
Clashes have broken out between Palestinians and Israeli security forces at Jerusalem's AlAqsa Mosque, and more than 150 people have been injured in the violence. The first face-off in the area since the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Israeli police said dozens of masked men marched into the mosque, chanting and setting off fireworks before throwing stones towards the Western Wall, which is considered the holiest site where Jews can pray. Israeli police said at least 3 of their officers have been hurt in the clashes. Tensions are high because Israel has been carrying out arrests and military raids in the West Bank after 4 attacks in Israel in the past 3 weeks, killing 14 people, most of them civilians. Now, some of the attacks in Israel were carried out by Arab citizens linked to the Islamic State group. Others were by Palestinians supported by militant groups like Hamas. In that same period of time, however, at least 18 Palestinians have been killed in the raids conducted by Israeli forces, including children. The site of today's clashes, the AlAqsa Mosque, is Islam's 3rd holiest site. Jews refer to it as the Temple Mount, in reference to 2 temples said to have stood there in antiquity. This very compound was at the heart of the Israeli-Palestine conflict last year and escalated into an 11-day war between Israel and the Hamas group controlling the Gaza Strip. The war led to the deaths of at least 260 Palestinians, 13 Israelis, and also the significant destruction of the Gaza Strip. Staying on Israel, and the country's increased its military capabilities by installing an iron beam. Now, this is touted to be the world's first energy-based weapons system, which uses a laser to strike down incoming missiles and mortars. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to arrive in India next week in a state visit that will aim to highlight a successful India-UK partnership. The visit, which is yet to be formally announced by Downing Street, follows the successful completion of 4 out of the 26 chapters in the ongoing India-UK Free Trade Agreement negotiations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Johnson are expected to take stock of the negotiations and mandate a timeline for the possible completion of the process, which was initially set for the end of the year. Johnson's visit, expected to be on April the 21st and the 22nd, well, there will likely be bilateral discussions and interactions during the visit with Indian business leaders. The visit is also likely to cover agreements across a variety of sectors, including defence, security and education. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is most likely to feature in the discussions as well, but other regional matters like the situation in Afghanistan and the UK's Indo-Pacific tilt will also be high on the agenda. Officials say discussions over India's stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict have remained cordial and respectful of New Delhi's hopes for a peaceful resolution. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Johnson last met in person on the sidelines of the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow in November last year. Their talks then focused on India's UK climate partnership and a review of the 2030 roadmap the two countries signed during a virtual summit back in May 2021. Johnson's visit had been long overdue. His previous visits have been cancelled twice before due to the COVID-19 pandemic. People have started taking energy prices into their own hands by switching to community-led energy production, as the rise in prices does not seem to be slowing down. Hundreds of small groups that are creating energy around the United Kingdom are demanding that the government make more effort to support them.
Energy production is going off-grid and into the heart of the community as households brace themselves for energy price hikes. The country has seen a massive surge in the number of people who are signing up to join community schemes that generate electricity. Around 350 local councils in the UK are supporting efforts aimed at making a legal change that would make it easier for community energy groups to sell power. The wind turbines used for this are entirely owned by the customers.
The turbine is now completed, it's generating energy.
You have a chunk of this?
That's right.
It's your turbine.
I have a small chunk of that turbine. I put up just under £1,000. It'll take about 100 and something pounds off my energy bill a year.
As per the experts, community energy has the potential to become a part of a wider consumer movement.
I think the time has come that, we don't need our energy assets to be owned by large companies. They'll always be a part of the mix, but I think consumers can increasingly be at the table as well.
However, there are also some who feel that the government could do more when it comes to supporting community-generated energy.
The reason that community energy has stalled is that the government, whilst saying that it's really important and that they really support it, have done nothing. They promised a plan in the net zero strategy and there was no plan.
The roofs of residential buildings are also being assessed to see whether they can be fitted with solar panels.
We have to, in some instances, limit the size of the installation we can put on the roof because whilst we benefit from the economies of scale in installing at that site, any excess generation spills into the grid for which we get very little return. If we were able to sell that electricity locally at more of a market rate, then we will be able to use buildings which had very large roofs.
However, there are plenty of places where this technology can be used. Members of these communities feel that everyone who has the ability should be looking into getting community energy schemes locally, since there are so many local authority buildings and houses that are perfect for installing solar panels. In the Brecon Beacons, the stream is successfully generating power for users, but how does it work? The water comes in through smaller pipes which generate electricity through the turbine. Some energy customers feel that there should be more of a mix of big providers and community initiatives. So as prices rise, communities could cut their bills if they can install their own energy technology and tap into people's power. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
We know that electrification is a hot trend in the automotive market. Companies around the world are betting big on electric vehicles. Not surprisingly, some exciting electric cars are being showcased at the 2022 New York International Auto Show. We leave you now with a roundup of the show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Electric vehicles are dominating the 2022 New York International Auto Show. One of the top performing EVs at the event is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. The vehicle won the World Car of the Year award. It also bagged the World Electric Car and World Car Design trophies at the show. An all-electric updated SUV Chrysler Airflow and the hybrid Alfa Romeo Tonale also caught the attention of visitors. The Tonale has about 30 miles of electric range before switching to gas. It's no secret that companies and buyers are going to electric for a variety of reasons.
Well, one of the big things that's happening is sort of a general move towards electrification. It's better for the planet, that kind of thing. But also there's a real spike in consumer interest in electric cars right now because of rising gas prices, with an average price of over $4 a gallon in the United States right now. At Cox Automotive, we saw a 69% jump in interest in electric cars in March versus January. So people are really looking at their options so they don't have to burn down their entire budgets on gasoline.
Another thing we see at the New York Auto Show is that there are a lot of electric car startups. Each one of them is trying to establish itself as a unique entity.
One of them is Indie EV, and they've got a focus on gaming. They've got a supercomputer under the hood that you can use for gaming purposes. Whether that's really relevant to car shoppers or just a gimmick that entices investors remains to be seen. One thing we have seen, though, is it is very, very hard to build a car and sell it to the public, but it's very, very easy to build a concept and build some hype. So I guess we'll see how many of the car makers here actually go to production.
The ongoing 2022 New York International Auto Show will end on April 24th.
This is right, Arab.
On WION Dispatch today, the big focus is on UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his visit to India next week. WION Sidhant Sibil gets us the inside scoop. Also on the show, counting down to the final round of the French elections, Ross Cullen gets us the latest updates from Paris on the tight race. Then on to Jerusalem, where Palestinians clash with Israeli forces. And next, we travel to South Africa to get you a ground report on how xenophobic attacks are on the rise there. And finally, we will tell you why Russian influencers are destroying their Chanel bags. All this and much more at 6 p.m. IST, only on WION World is One.